My dad demanded to give my new apartment to my sister, who deserved it unlike me. So I refused, and when he started threatening to disinherit me, I handed him the documents proving that his favorite daughter. I never thought signing a lease for my own apartment would turn into a full-blown family war. But the moment my dad found out, he acted like I had stolen something that rightfully belonged to my sister. According to him, she was the one who deserved the place, not me. Why? Because she was his golden child, the one who could do no wrong while I was just there. First I thought he was joking. But he wasn't. He told me straight up that I should hand over my new apartment to my sister because she needed it more. When I refused, things got ugly. The guilt trips, the yelling. It was like he couldn't believe I had the nerve to stand up for myself. And then came the ultimate threat. If I didn't do as he said, he would cut me out of his will. That was supposed to break me. But instead I smiled. Because I had something he didn't know. A set of documents that could shatter his entire illusion about his perfect daughter. And when I finally handed them to him, his face drained of color. He had no idea what was coming. My dad stared at the papers in his hands, his fingers gripping them so tightly they started to crumple. His confidence, his anger, it all vanished in an instant. He wasn't yelling anymore. He wasn't demanding. He was just silent. And in that silence I could feel the weight of the truth settling in. Growing up, I always knew my sister was his favorite. She got the best of everything, the praise, the gifts, the attention. If she made a mistake, it was brushed off. If I made one, I was reminded of it for weeks. I learned early on that no matter how hard I tried, I would never be enough in his eyes. But that didn't mean I was going to roll over and let him take what was mine. When I first told him I was moving into my own place, he barely reacted. Just nodded like he wasn't even listening. But the moment my sister found out, everything changed. She acted like I had stolen something from her, throwing a fit about how she should be the one with a new apartment, not me. She complained to my dad, and of course he jumped in to fix the situation by telling me to hand it over. I stood my ground. I worked for this place. I saved every extra penny, took extra shifts, and spent years dreaming of having a space that was mine. I wasn't about to give it up just because my sister decided she deserved it. But my dad wasn't used to hearing no from me. He tried everything: guilt, manipulation, even a thinly veiled threat about cutting me out of the will. That's when I realized he thought he had all the power. But he didn't. I had these documents for a while. I never planned to use them like this, but when he pushed me into a corner, I knew I had no choice. I watched his face as he read the first few lines, his expression shifting from confusion to something darker. "What is this?" he finally muttered. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Take a guess." His eyes darted across the page, scanning every word. I could almost hear his brain trying to make sense of it, trying to deny what was right in front of him. But he couldn't. Not this time. My sister had always been his golden child, the one he went out of his way to protect. But he never saw the full picture. He didn't see the messes she made when he wasn't looking. The debts. The lies. The things she got away with because he refused to believe she could ever do wrong. But I did. And now so did he. "This isn't possible," he said under his breath, shaking his head. But his voice wasn't as strong as before. "It is," I said. "And you know it." For years, my sister had been living beyond her means. Flashy clothes, expensive vacations, a lifestyle she couldn't afford. My dad thought she was just lucky, that she had a way of getting nice things without struggling for them. But what he didn't know was that she was drowning in debt. And worse, she had been using his name to secure loans and credit. I found out by accident. A bank statement came to my old address and her name wasn't on it. His was. At first I thought it was a mistake, but then I started digging. What I found was worse than I imagined. She had maxed out credit cards, taken out loans she never intended to pay back, and let them pile up under his name, all while he kept believing she was his perfect little girl. I tried to warn him before in small ways. I mentioned that her lifestyle didn't match her income, that maybe he should keep an eye on things. But he brushed me off. To him I was just jealous. I was always just jealous. But now, standing in front of me with the truth staring him in the face, he had no words. How did you get this?" he finally asked, his voice hoarse. I shrugged. "Does it matter?" He swallowed hard. This isn't right. She wouldn't do this." I let out a dry laugh. "Of course she would. And she did. And you let her, because you never thought she could do anything wrong. His hands were shaking now. Maybe it was anger, maybe it was fear. Maybe, for the first time in his life, he realized that the daughter he put on a pedestal was the one who had been betraying him all along. I could see the war going on inside his head. He didn't want to believe it. He wanted to find some excuse, some way to make this my fault. But the documents didn't lie. He set them down slowly, rubbing his temples. "What do you want?" he finally asked, his voice tired. I raised an eyebrow. "What do I want?" "Yes," he snapped, his old anger creeping back in. "Why are you showing me this? What do you want from me?" I stared at him for a long moment. Maybe he still thought I was trying to get something out of him. Maybe he couldn't understand that I didn't want anything, except for him to stop treating me like I was less than her. "I don't want anything from you," I said, my voice calm. "I just wanted you to know the truth." He scoffed, shaking his head. "And what? You think this changes anything?" I felt my stomach tighten, but I refused to show it. "I think it changes everything." He stood there for a long time, staring at the papers again like they might disappear if he just looked at them hard enough. But they wouldn't. The truth was out. And now he had to decide what to do with it. The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. My dad kept staring at the documents, his lips pressed into a tight line. His jaw clenched so hard I thought he might snap. I knew he was trying to find a way out of this, some excuse that would let him keep believing that my sister was the innocent one, that I was the problem. But this time there was no way to twist the truth. The proof was right in front of him. Then, as if on cue, my sister walked in. She must have heard the tension in my dad's voice because her usual smug expression faltered the moment she saw the look on his face. Her eyes flicked between us, and then down to the stack of papers he was gripping like a lifeline. I saw the way her body stiffened, the way her fingers twitched at her sides. She knew. She knew exactly what those documents were. And I couldn't take it anymore. He didn't argue, but his guilt was thick in the air between us. We both knew he had failed me, failed us, but neither of us knew how to fix it. Just then the doorbell rang. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't expected anyone, and certainly not after everything that had gone down today. My dad didn't move, his eyes still glued to the table, as if he was trying to avoid facing whatever came next. I stood up, my mind racing. Who could it be? Was it my sister coming back to try and turn things around? Or worse, was it someone from the banks or the creditors, showing up at the door because of her mess? I opened the door cautiously. It was a lawyer. I froze. The man was tall, wearing a suit that looked too expensive for this neighborhood. He didn't look like the type of person you would expect to find on your doorstep in the middle of a family crisis. "Are you my name?" he asked in a calm, even tone, scanning me with piercing eyes. I nodded slowly. Yes. He didn't smile, didn't offer any pleasantries. Instead, he handed me an envelope, thick with papers. "Your father has asked me to deliver this to you." I glanced at the envelope, my stomach dropping. It was addressed to me, but my father's name was clearly visible at the top, written in bold letters. I opened it quickly, but my hands were shaking as I pulled out the papers. My heart raced as I scanned the words, my mind struggling to process what I was reading. It was a legal document, an official notice of inheritance, and it was from my father's lawyer. I couldn't make sense of it at first. It was a will, his will. But there was something off about it. My hands gripped the paper tighter as I read the next line. In the event of a dispute regarding the distribution of property, all rights are to be transferred to the primary beneficiary, my eldest daughter. My name. My mind was racing now, trying to piece together what this meant. I glanced at the lawyer, who had yet to speak. He seemed completely unfazed by the gravity of the situation. "You need to understand something, miss. My name," he said finally, his voice low. "This is not a simple matter of inheritance. Your father has made some decisions that have changed things. This is no longer about just who gets what, but how it's going to affect everyone involved." I felt a cold chill spread down my spine. What was he talking about? Why did it sound like things were about to get even worse? I turned back to the lawyer, my voice trembling. "What does this mean for me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he just looked at me, his eyes unreadable. And in that moment, I realized that the situation had shifted from a family conflict to something far bigger. Something far more dangerous. The stakes had been raised. And I had no idea how deep this rabbit hole went. The weight of the lawyer's words hung in the air, suffocating me as I stared at the papers in my hands. I could barely breathe as I tried to make sense of what he was saying. The mention of decisions affecting everyone involved, it felt like a warning, a threat wrapped in professional jargon. My stomach churned, and for a brief moment, I wondered if I had made a huge mistake by confronting my dad. Maybe this was more than I could handle. I looked up at the lawyer, my voice barely a whisper. "What exactly are you trying to say?" His face remained neutral, but I could see the flicker of something else in his eyes. Fear, but why would he be afraid? Wasn't he just doing his job? "The terms of your father's will have changed," he said slowly, carefully. "And it's no longer just about who inherits what. There are conditions now. Conditions that have been put in place to ensure your sister gets what she's owed." I froze. "What do you mean, what she's owed?" The lawyer hesitated, then looked at me with something like pity. "You should sit down for this, Miss My Name. This isn't a simple matter of inheritance anymore. There are legal implications that go far beyond property or assets. Your father has made arrangements that involve your sister far more than you." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had spent so much time fighting for my place in this family, trying to prove that I deserved to be seen and heard. But now it felt like I had been played, like my father had already made up his mind about what he wanted, about who mattered. But what could it be? What could my sister have over him that would make him put her above me, even after everything she had done? The lawyer continued, his voice low, almost like he was worried someone might overhear. "Your father's financial troubles go deeper than you think. He has debts, large ones that are tied to some risky business ventures. The money he borrowed for your sister's lifestyle? It wasn't just loans from banks. It was much more complicated than that." I blinked, my mind struggling to catch up. "What are you saying? That he used me to pay her debts?" The lawyer shook his head. "Not exactly. Your father has been making risky deals for years now. But the reason he's been so insistent on keeping your sister happy, it's not just for love, Miss My Name. It's because she has been involved in some of these deals herself, and they go far beyond family squabbles." I felt my heart stop. "Involved? What do you mean, involved?" The lawyer shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to the door as if he was worried someone might overhear. "I shouldn't be saying this, but your sister has connections. Dangerous connections. People who have been working with your father for years. And if things don't go according to plan..." He trailed off, but I didn't need him to finish the sentence. The implication was clear. My sister wasn't just a spoiled brat throwing tantrums to get what she wanted. She was tangled up in something darker, something that could destroy all of us. And my dad? He had been too deep in it to see how far the rabbit hole went. I could feel the ground shifting beneath me. Everything I thought I knew about my family, about the people I trusted, was being torn apart. And I was standing right in the middle of it. "I don't understand," I said, my voice shaking. "How could she get involved in something like that? How could Dad let her do that? I thought he was trying to protect her." The lawyer sighed deeply. "He didn't know. Or at least not at first. Your sister got in over her head. And your father? Well, he didn't realize how dangerous the people she was involved with truly were." "But why is this about me?" I asked, my mind spinning. "Why are you giving me these papers? Why is this all happening now?" He looked at me for a long moment before answering. "Because, Miss My Name, your sister's debts are just the tip of the iceberg. Your father has signed off on something that puts both of you in danger now. But you're the one who can fix it. If you want to save your family, you'll have to make a choice." I felt a chill run down my spine. What choice? What could I possibly do to fix all of this? "The choice is this," the lawyer continued. "The terms of the will are clear. If you want your inheritance, you need to take responsibility for what your sister has done. But doing so means getting involved in the same dangerous world she's been living in. If you refuse, it will all fall on your father's shoulders. And he won't be able to protect either of you anymore." My mind raced. Was this some sort of trap? A test to see who would cave under pressure? Or was this really the choice I had to make? I turned the papers over and over in my hands, trying to absorb everything. But the more I read, the more I realized that my dad had played me just as much as he had played my sister. He was in too deep. And now I had to decide whether I wanted to dig myself into the same hole, or find a way to claw my way out. The stakes were higher than ever, and I didn't know if I could trust anyone anymore, not even my own father. As the lawyer stood up to leave, he gave me one last look. "I'll be in touch, miss, my name. You don't have much time." The door shut behind him with a soft click, and I was left standing in the silence, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. What the hell had I gotten myself into? I sat in the silence long after the lawyer had left, staring at the papers in front of me. My heart was pounding, my mind racing through everything he had told me. I had no idea what to do next. I couldn't trust my father anymore. And my sister was tangled up in something far darker than I could have ever imagined. But what was I supposed to do? How could I fix this mess when it felt like everything was slipping out of my control? I spent the night turning over the decision in my head, the pressure mounting with each passing hour. It wasn't just about money anymore. It wasn't just about the apartment. This was about family, about loyalty, trust, and the dangerous game my sister had been playing. And now it seemed like I was being pulled into it whether I liked it or not. The next morning I walked into my father's office, the weight of the decision heavy in my chest. He was sitting at his desk, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. The powerful man who had always been the cornerstone of our family now seemed fragile, broken by everything he had done. "Dad," I said, my voice firm despite the fear I was feeling. "We need to talk." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with regret, but there was something else too, something more guarded. He knew what was coming. I could see it in his face. "I know what you're going to say," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I never meant for things to get this out of hand. I just wanted to keep your sister safe, but I was blinded by everything." "I know, Dad," I said, sitting down across from him, "but we can't keep pretending everything is fine. I can't fix it all, but I have to do something. We have to face it head on." He was silent for a long time, his gaze fixed on the desk, and I could almost hear the thoughts racing through his head. Finally he spoke. "Your sister," he started, his voice breaking. "She's been in over her head for years. But I thought I could save her. I thought I could protect her from the consequences of her actions, but now I know she's too far gone. You're right. I need to stop making excuses for her." I nodded, feeling a bitter taste in my mouth. "It's too late to protect her, Dad. She's involved with people who are more dangerous than you realize. And you've let it go on for so long." His face darkened at my words, but I wasn't going to hold back anymore. He had put me in this position, and it was time to stop pretending everything would magically get better. "I need you to sign the papers," I said, pushing the will across the desk. "This isn't just about inheritance anymore. It's about keeping us safe from the mess you've helped create. I'm not going to be a part of it anymore." For a moment he just stared at the papers. But then with a deep sigh, he picked up the pen and signed his name without another word. I took the signed papers, my heart pounding as I watched him crumble in front of me. For the first time in years I felt like I was making a decision that would change everything, not just for me but for my family. But just as I turned to leave, I heard his voice one last time. "You don't understand, do you?" I froze, my hand on the door. "What do you mean?" He looked at me, his eyes wide with fear. "I didn't want you to know the truth, but I think it's time you did. Your sister, she's been blackmailing me. For years. And I did what I had to do to keep her quiet." I stared at him, shocked. "What?" He ran a shaky hand through his hair. "She had dirt on me. On us. I didn't want you to get hurt. But now I see that I've done more harm than good." I felt a cold wave of realization hit me. My sister wasn't just playing us. She had been playing a much bigger game. The debts, the connections, the manipulation, it was all part of a much darker plan. And my father had been so blinded by his guilt that he had let her pull the strings. Before I could speak, the doorbell rang again. This time I wasn't prepared for what I would find. When I opened the door, there stood my sister. But something was different. There was no rage in her eyes, no anger or spite, just a cold, calculating look that sent a shiver down my spine. "I think it's time you and I had a conversation," she said, stepping into the house without waiting for an invitation. I glanced over my shoulder at my dad, who looked as surprised as I felt. He didn't say a word, but his face told me everything I needed to know. "I've known about your little plan, you know," she continued, her voice dripping with a mixture of confidence and something darker. "You thought you could just take everything away from me, didn't you? But you're not as clever as you think, dear sister. My heart skipped a beat. What are you talking about? She smirked. You see, I've been one step ahead of you the entire time. That little lawyer you talked to? He's mine. And now that you've signed those papers, I've got exactly what I need to make sure you never get what's rightfully yours. I felt my blood run cold. You've been playing both of us this whole time? Her smile only widened. You were always my pawn, sweetheart. I've been in control from the very beginning. My world shattered as the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. She had manipulated not just my father but me as well. Everything had been a setup and now she had won. But even as I stood there stunned and helpless, a small part of me refused to accept defeat. I wasn't going down without a fight. I stood frozen, my mind scrambling to make sense of what my sister had just revealed. All this time I thought I was taking control, making decisions that would finally put me in a place of strength, but I had been outplayed from the start. Every move I had made, every moment I had spent trying to protect my father and secure my future, had been part of her plan. She had orchestrated everything, the lawyer, the documents, even the debts. I had walked right into it. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest as I took a step back, trying to find my footing. You've been pulling the strings this whole time? I asked, my voice shaking. She laughed, a cold, hollow sound that made my skin crawl. You really thought you had a chance, didn't you? The whole time you were so focused on proving yourself to Dad. You never saw what was right in front of you. But that's okay, I'll make sure you have a place in this family, just not the one you think. I glanced at my father, who sat there pale and defeated, his head hung low. He hadn't said a word, but his silence spoke volumes. My sister was the one in control, and I was the pawn caught in the middle. But something inside me snapped. I couldn't just sit there and let her win, couldn't let her manipulate everyone any longer. This wasn't just about the inheritance or the apartment, it was about family, trust, and the dangerous game we had all been playing. I'm not going to let you get away with this, I said, my voice steadying. You think you've won, but you haven't. Not yet. She raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. And what are you going to do? You don't have anything left. You've signed your life away. I haven't signed anything yet, I shot back, holding up the papers I had signed earlier. And even if I had, that doesn't mean I'm giving up. This isn't just about money, it's about what's right. Her smirk faltered for a second, but she quickly regained her composure. You think you can outsmart me now? You don't even know half of what's going on. I might not know everything, I said, stepping closer, but I know enough. And I'm not afraid to fight for what's mine. For what's ours. I turned to my father, who had been silent this entire time. His gaze was filled with regret, but I could also see the faintest flicker of something else. Something that resembled guilt, maybe even shame. I knew he wasn't entirely to blame for everything that had happened, but he had allowed it to spiral out of control. It wasn't too late to take responsibility and make things right. Dad, it's time, I said softly, walking up to him. You need to step up and fix this. We need to do this together. We can't let her drag us down any further. He looked at me, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a spark of hope in his eyes. It wasn't much, but it was enough. My sister, however, was having none of it. You're wasting your time, she sneered. You don't have the power to change anything. You've already lost. I ignored her, focusing solely on my father. He stood up slowly, his movements stiff, as if he was waking up from a long, painful slumber. I've made so many mistakes, he admitted, his voice breaking. But I can still fix this. We can fix this. Together. For the first time, I saw him as more than just the father who had disappointed me, more than just the man who had let me down so many times. He was human, flawed, but still trying to find his way back to what mattered. We both turned to face my sister, who was now visibly rattled by the shift in the room. Her confident facade was cracking, revealing the panic beneath. You think this is over? She spat, taking a step back. You think you can just take everything from me? I've worked too hard for this, and I'm not going to let you ruin it. I'm not trying to ruin anything, I said, stepping forward. But I'm done letting you control everything. You've been using people for your own gain, manipulating us all. And it's time it stopped. My sister stood there, her face red with rage, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes now. She had built this empire of lies and deceit, and for the first time she realized that it was crumbling. She took one last look at my father, then at me, and without a word, she turned and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. The tension in the room was palpable, but there was a sense of relief too. The battle wasn't over, but the first steps toward reclaiming control had been taken. My father and I stood there in silence for a moment. It wasn't a victory. Not yet. But it was a start. A small, fragile beginning to a much longer journey of rebuilding trust, of facing the consequences of our actions, and of healing the wounds that had been left open for so long. Dad, I said quietly, we have a lot of work to do. But I'm not giving up on us. He nodded, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and regret. Neither am I. I'm sorry for everything. The apology wasn't enough to undo the damage, but it was a start. And that's all we could ask for. As I walked out of the office, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, but I knew the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges. My sister would always be a part of our lives, but for now at least I had reclaimed my peace. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my own story, and that was worth everything.